All right. Yeah.
Good morning. On behalf of Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, the Commission, Manager Canton, and staff, welcome to the business meeting of the City Commission of the City of Truth and Consequences. It is now 9 o'clock on September 12th. I would ask you if you have any device on your person that's going to make a sound that will disrupt this meeting, if you could please put it on off or mute, it would be greatly appreciated. Clerk Torres, can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green.
Here.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead. Here. Honorable Kathy Clark.
Here.
Honorable Ralph Hashler.
Here.
Honorable Paul Buckett.
Here. We have a quorum. Thank you. Just a point of explanation. I will be referring, after I've checked with council, to our interim manager, Canton, as Manager Canton, and the capacity that Angela Torres is serving in as clerk. I checked with legal, and I feel comfortable in doing this, and I've been advised that if I feel comfortable, if I'm running the meeting, or whoever's running the meeting, it's perfectly permissible, because they are acting in their capacity. Please join me in 15 seconds of silent meditation. Thank you. The next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, could you please lead us?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is approval of agenda. Commissioner Blocker, could I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda, but with one change, please. I'd like to move G2 under TV business, H2.
And then everything else would be moved,
Moved
dropped
down,
down one.
yes,
Thank
yes,
you.
sir.
So I have a motion by Commissioner Blocker. I need a second by
I'll second that motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those please signify by saying aye if you agree.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item is number C, comments from the public. 3-minute rule applies. If you have anything, any documentation that you want to become as a permanent part of the record of this meeting, please put it in the black box next to the microphone. The floor is yours.
Good morning, Mayor Green, Commission. I'm not on the agenda this morning. However, I do want to make a
Just
public
stand as-
statement.
Just for the record, we know who you are.
I'm
You could
getting
just
there.
State your name, please.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm coming on the record as Judge Sanders from the Truth and Consequences Municipal Court. And my statement is referencing what I do in the municipal court. Today, what I simply want to do, and very quickly, is to clarify that for myself, and the public to understand that I do not endorse or participate in any programs or initiatives by anybody outside of the court. My procedures fall under the law, and so I have to address them as such. Lately, I've understood that there are situations where primarily animal control citations and violations have been practically doubling up. And so I manage those in the court. But what I want to be here and say today is that the court is always open. The door is always open. The public is invited, as are you all, to come in and directly ask me how I am managing any violation or penalties that are filed in the municipal court. It is a court of public record until, once we put the docket number on something, it becomes a record. I can answer any questions that you have about the process, the procedure, the penalties, and my perimeters, okay? I don't have any perimeters outside of the New Mexico laws and the ordinance. So that, I just wanted to make sure that it was understood, that I'm not endorsing anything outside of the court. Thank you.
Thank you.
No questions?
Thank you. Ms. Ashbaugh.
Randy Ashbaugh, 1023 North Popular Street, lifelong resident. I'd like to express, I've been in business in this town almost 40 years, and I would like to see the commission expedite getting a new city manager, one that is dynamic, that knows the laws, knows structure, knows how to handle people. We are in a hell of a mess. I think everybody knows. I'm still getting calls from city employees on things, and I'm really scratching my head. And they have the American right. This is the United States. They can tell anybody they want. They have the freedom of speech. You're probably going to have to pay $100,000 to $200,000 to get somebody in here to clean this mess up, and it's got to get cleaned up. This town has more potential than any little town I've ever seen. Rivers, lakes, hot mineral water, ranching, farming. And I think this ATV thing needs to go in big. We could be the ATV capital of the Southwest. If you look back up on Mud Mountain and Twin Peaks, that used to be the racetrack for the Jeeps when I was a kid. And they said it's going to tear up this, that, and the other. Sure, there was tire tracks and stuff. You can look up there now and there's nothing. Nature has a way of taking and balancing everything out. Everything in physics seeks equilibrium. So environmentally, I think it would be fine. I gave each one of you a letter from Wade Jackson from the state from August 21st, 2012. And it is a letter where the city got their contract canceled when they bid against all the other people that wanted to put their Spaceport Visitor Center in. The city had really no business competing against private enterprise. Mr. Green, Mr. Cortez, and Mr. Fuentes were the three people that came out of the room. I was there, who made the presentation, and the city was found that they either negotiated in bad faith or committed, as it reads right here, the city would be in violation pursuant to 1.4.1.88, which is a New Mexico State statute that states that they either acted fraudulently or in bad faith. After that happened, and this was determined, Mr. Green, Mr. Fuentes, and Mr. Cortez should have resigned. Mr. Green, you need to resign. You're part of this huge mess. You are right in the middle of it, and I know that you've expressed and given direction to other city employees, which is against New Mexico State statute. You need to go. Period. And I want this on the record. I put it in the box. Thank you, Commission.
Mr. Fenn.
Good morning, Commissioners. Ron Fenn, who's just Mr. Fenn. Isn't that right, Mr. Green? I take that as a compliment because I wouldn't want to be you. I want to talk to you about Ordinance 697. I think this is the sloppiest piece of work that I have ever seen, pushing this ordinance through the way that you did. This is the first and last page of the ordinance. It is ridiculous. Cut and paste. When you cut and paste things, you should eliminate the things that you don't need. This ordinance states, be it ordained by the Board of Commissioners, city commissioners of the City of Truth or Consequences. Are you the Board of Commissioners and the city commissioners? This was ripped out of the county's ordinance directly. The last page, it says, effective date. It says, the ordinance shall be recorded and authenticated by the county clerk following the adoption of the Board of County Commissioners. The effective date of the ordinance shall be 30 days. Then there's Section 1. Oh, there is no Section 1. There's Section 2, and there's Section 3, in which it says the provisions of the ordinance shall become effective 5 days after publishing the adoption. This is signed by Mr. Green, certified by the city clerk. It is ridiculous. It is embarrassing for a city to do what you did. On the other hand, another thing that I have to bring up is, Mr. Green, you have no ethics. You have no loyalty. I was shocked that you did not vote no against the firing of Mr. Fuentes, although I'm glad to see him gone. You showed no ethics whatsoever. Just months before, you wrote this: "As a commissioner mayor, I am proud and delighted that he is our city manager who represents us so well. From what he inherited and the turnaround of our city, which is now pointed in the right direction, due to his leadership, there is no one more deserving of this award than Juan Fuentes. It is my honor to put his name into consideration." And then you threw him under the bus unnecessarily. I would have had this much respect for you had you voted no and stuck with the man that you've been backing for the last 7 years. You're an embarrassment to this community.
Diane Lombardo, Silver Street, Tier C. First thing I want to do is thank Chief Aragon for moving the volunteers for the shelter along. He has asked people that I thoroughly approve of to help out with that. Also, I spoke to Ms. Day earlier this week. I have a friend in Florida who has launched a very successful campaign, and she's willing to help us as soon as Ms. Day sends me some pictures, and hopefully we can flood the city with that campaign when we get it going. So it's a really cute campaign. The other thing I would like to address is this this new ordinance about ATVs. Yeah, you know Silver Street is going to be one of the streets that they use, and this is for the rubber chickens and people like them. It's not for the rest of us. I think this thing was pushed through way too fast. Mr. Fenn and I do agree on this. I didn't read the ordinance, but if that's how it reads, it's obviously no real thought went into it. I think you should have had a forum and had people come and talk to you and tell them their opinions before you tried to push this thing through. And unlike Mr. Ashbaugh, I do not believe I have seen what off-road vehicles do. I have seen and I know what happens to the wildlife. Nature does not, it takes a long time for nature to repair this damage. I mean, if you look at El Camino Real, you can still see where it is. You can still see where it is. 400 years later, you can still see where it is. So no, nature does not fix things. Global warming, money over nature. And Mr. Ashbaugh is money over nature. And as far as firing Mr. Fuentes, maybe he needed it, maybe he didn't. However, I'm beginning to feel like this is a government by Randy. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the commission? Is he full?
My name is Sharon Easthold, 1301 North Silver, and I'm not going to address the ordinance right now. I'll talk about that at another time. Today, I would like to praise your decision to recognize Officer Alpha Diva Peru over here. She is an awesome officer. on a day, I can't remember the exact date, but my husband and I were trying to figure out how to protect our property, our 209.6 acres of the Conservancy against off-road vehicles. And we were back behind the Baptist church. And from across the canyons, we could see a white truck backing up his OHV trailer loaded with trash. And we thought, uh-oh. So being the foolish folks that we were, we hopped in our little car and went over there and blocked the road. And this very large young man got out. We're thinking, you know, we're a couple of old folks. What are we doing facing down some guy we don't know? Anyway, it turned out he was a marshmallow. His name was Michael, and I had my iPad ready, and I was taking pictures of him and his license plate and his car and the trash he was dumping on that access road. An officer, we called the police, and she came out as soon as she could, had a little trouble finding the road. It's an access road, so it's not really on the map. And she saw the picture. She says, that's all I need. And she was able to send him a ticket, and it turns out he was driving without a license, and he ended up going to jail. We had hoped he'd come back and clean up his mess, but, you know, some recycle artists came and picked up some of it, and the leaves have all matted down over time. So you've got a very fine officer in Officer Peru, and I commend you for recognizing that in her today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the commission? Yes, sir.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. My name is Jeff Smith. I am managing the development of the Copper Flat Mine here in Sierra County. We have a public hearing coming up week after next, the week of September 24 to 28. This hearing is on the groundwater protection discharge permit that has been proposed by the New Mexico Environment Department Groundwater Quality Division. This hearing is very important, and I would encourage you and all citizens to come to the hearing and hear more about our plans and our designs to protect groundwater. Our plans have been studied by the Bureau for 6 years, and they have determined that our plans are protective of New Mexico groundwater. In addition to our protection, our plans include hiring 270 people or more over the course of the mine. We expect to hire people from the local area as well as people from outside. There's been discussion of our agreement with the Hickory Apache Nation. We are open to hiring people from the nation. We're not prejudiced in our hiring, but we will be hiring also from the city and the local area. Again, I encourage everyone to come to the hearing and hear more details and facts about our plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the, yes?
Honorable Mayor and members of the Commission, my name is Ike Eastbold. I live at 1301 North Silver, and I want to add my voice to Sharon's in commending Officer Alfadiva Peru. We've gotten help from her on several occasions. She's very professional and very effective in what she does. We had actually a transvestite homeless person camping on our property, in which we noticed and just hoped he would leave, but he didn't, and so we had to call for help, because it's not wise to approach homeless people on your own. And so she did help in a very professional and kind way to escort him off the property. And we were very gratified, because there are no ill will toward these people. I just wish that the city had more resources to offer them. I think you can offer them 1 day of lodging, and that's it. So there's something on the agenda to make you a great city. We invested in some very fine Chihuahuan Desert property to make a conservancy and a visitor center along Smith, just a little bit south of Sun Valley Hardware, and begin to attract some of the nature lovers and bird watchers and others that are interested in the Chihuahuan Desert. The Chihuahuan Desert Research Institute down by Marfa in West Texas is very successful. They have 500 acres and an endowment of $2 million and probably 30,000 volunteers, and they just have done very well with the southern Chihuahuan Desert. We are the northern Chihuahuan Desert. It's a different biome with some overlap. So we think this really fits in with the healing waters and the art emphases here to create a landscape like this, which would appeal to middle-aged people and seniors, which is 30% of the population here. And we do not think that make this the ATV capital of the world, as Randy Ashbaugh said, is consistent with who you are and who we are and why we came here. And so we oppose that, and we hope it will be reconsidered by your commission. So that's about all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address the commission? Ron?
Good morning, Commissioners, Mayor, Ron Pecoric, TRC. I'm up here asking for the second time for some clarification about the $500,000 deficit that was reported on the August 8th Commission meeting. I was talking about gross receipts tax in the August 15th paper of the Herald. It says that the biggest share of city revenue comes from sales tax, also known as gross receipts tax, according to the city manager. He said the city's shrinking revenue, Walmart's doing fine. We got a brewery now, more gross receipts tax coming in. The shrinking revenue tends to underscored by the state's recent reduction in small city assistance funds. Gross receipts tax are different than small city assistance funds. So is there really a $500,000 discrepancy? And the state had announced that they got found a $1.2 billion in revenue because the oil price, the gas prices were up. So I'd like some clarification for the second time I'm asking this question. And Mayor Green, you're the one that said it on August 8th at the commissioner meeting, that there was a $500,000 deficit that we have to make up somehow. So I would appreciate a response. Thank you. Oh, by the way, I have to say, for Juan Fuentes, that man took a major amount of verbal abuse, and I never heard him ever come back with anything to anybody else.
Twitter.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Klaus Wittern. I reside at 618 Charles. I would like to address two issues today. One is I commend the city for having brought forward for consideration the electric meter issue. I believe you need to look at it a little bit more closer than, because I think there might be a $60,000 bust in it. But nevertheless, I think I have verified now to you from an independent source that the cost of those meters and the installation thereof is significantly lower than what was previously provided to you. I will make the same statement next Monday, I believe, at the PUAB meeting, and they will have the ability to look into the cost issue. I can only assume it because I have the data, but I'm not privileged to the discussions that go on between the staff. The other issue that I would like to certainly encourage you to participate in is the mine public hearing. I did not hear whether it was in TLC or whether it was in Santa Fe. I think that will make a great difference. I would encourage that public hearing to take place in TLC, and hopefully that can be arranged. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Mr. Rickert?
Hello, good morning. Stanley Rickert, 1705 Cary Street, TRC. I had some noise over there at my place, and I called up the dispatch, and they told me they have till 10 o'clock to stop that noise. And I was like, wait, I don't remember seeing anything in the ordinance about any time limit they could run or operate some type of a machine that would make extra noise, especially 7:30 at night. You know, people trying to quiet down and relax, and you're having to put up with somebody else running a machine outside making a lot of extra noise. So, Chapter 8, Article 2, offenses relating to public order and safety for unreasonable noise, Section 8-34. Unreasonable noise consists of creating unreasonably loud, disturbing, and unnecessary noise of such character, intensity, or duration as to be detrimental to the repose, life, or health of others, including but not limited to specific noises. Of course, it goes on to tell you about, radios or bands or music and other things like that, but it doesn't say anything about any time limit. So I called up the dispatch, and they said, well, as soon as they can free up an officer, they'll send somebody out there to check it out. Before that happened, I got a call from Lieutenant Baker. Lieutenant Baker told me the same thing. There's a 10 p.m. limit that he can run that machine until 10 p.m. in the evening. And I was like, where does it say that? Oh, I don't know the ordinance number right now, but I said, well, I need to know what it is so I can check it out. She never did give me an ordinance, so this is what I'm showing you right now. Check it out, okay? So I would like to know why these people don't have, their facts and figures before they start making comments to me about what I should or shouldn't do or what I can or can't do when they don't even know what they're talking about. I'd like to talk about that. Anyway, other than that, I don't have much else to say. Sorry to see Juan Fuentes go. He was good in certain respects. He had a lot of things to talk about and had a lot of business taken care of, but whatever reason you come up with for letting him leave, that's your business. But I thought he was a pretty good guy. Anyway, appreciate it. You guys have a great day.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing none, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I do have one comment from
Beg
the
your
public
pardon?
that was emailed to me.
Sorry, go ahead. Manager Canton.
Thank you. This comment is from Adon Trujillo, and it's related to the thoughts on the process for selecting a new city manager. So I'll do my best to get through as much as I can. Job description, report on compliance with city ordinances and personnel policies. Job description for city manager should describe the need for the city manager to ensure that a review of all city ordinances needs to be completed within 90 days of assuming the position as city manager. The city manager shall issue a report to the city commission of any discrepancies within the actual day-to-day practices and written city ordinances and personnel policies. The report shall delineate clear measures that need to be taken to ensure all the city ordinances and policies are complied with, and with respect to the policies, position requirements, and duties shall be reviewed to ensure that the language in these descriptions are in keeping with their duties. The report must include specific areas in which day-to-day operations of the city management administration are not complying with specific ordinances and policies. The report should include recommendations as to the language in the ordinances and policies that need to be removed or changed to improve the administration of the city, and identify needed workshops and time schedule to educate staff and/or commissioners on matters related to the respective duties, responsibilities, and authorities of city staff and consultants, commissioners, and also boards. As part of his or her review, the city manager should solicit input from the public to identify areas of the day-to-day operations do not follow established city ordinances. The public should also be consulted to identify specific language in the ordinances and policies which should be considered to be changed. Having a workshop to solicit input should be highly recommended. Importantly, the job announcement for the position of city manager should adhere to the intent of including required qualification for the position and desired qualifications for the position. Should an applicant not meet required qualification, that person's application must be discarded. If no one meets the required qualification for the position, the job announcement should be republished. Then it starts with role of the human resource specialist. The director of human resources should be to ensure that the job announcement includes specific requirements for the position and the duties of the position. The director of HR should not be a member of the selection committee. Rather, the director should serve to ensure that the process follows state and federal regulations. It's a fair process that specific weight points are established.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from the public? Seeing none, then we will move on. Next item is item D, response to public comments. Does anybody have any response?
May I have
Yes.
two, if I might?
Sure, of course.
First of all, to Mr. Pecoric, in your comments about the $500 deficit, I just want to clarify that $500,000. It's not a discrepancy, it's a reduction in the revenues from the gross receipts tax and the small cities assistance that we receive through the state. So I just wanted to clarify that point. And also to Mr. Vittern, the September hearings are scheduled for the Civic Center across the way, so they are local. Thank you.
And I'd like to respond to a couple ones to Mr. Trujillo about who interviews and hires the city manager. The city manager actually is the employee of the commission, and it is the commission that will do the interviewing and the ultimate determination of who's going to be hired. Mr. McCord, just to follow up on Manager Canton, in 2016, we received $638,000 from Santa Fe under a program called Small City Assistance, and that money goes into our general fund. Doesn't get earmarked for an enterprise, wastewater or electric or anything. It goes into the operating account, the general fund of the city. This year, we opened up the mail from Santa Fe, and the check was $131,000. There's your $500,000 that I was referring to. The other thing is I'd like to just comment on Mr. Ashba and Mr. Fenn. I suspect that I will be hearing the same drumbeat for the next 18 months, and if you decide to use your allotted 3-minute time to do that, I am perfectly comfortable with it. It's saying the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, and I can guarantee you the result will not change. Thank you very much. The next item is presentations. Number 1, presentations of certificate of commendation to Officer Anthony Zagorski, Officer Alfrediva Peru, I hope I got that right, and thank you for the coaching this morning, and Officer Jaffe Blomquist. And our presenter is our Chief of Police, Mr. Randall Aragon.
Mayor, members of the City Commission, City Manager, it gives me great honor and pleasure to, I want to read this first to present these commendations, but I want to read the facts of what happened, okay? This is from Captain Apodaca. Subject, commendation, recommendation, Officer Zagorski, Peru, and Blomquist. The above-mentioned officers responded to a medical call to Ace Lodge where they found a male subject lying on the ground unresponsive.
The officers took turns performing life-saving chest compressions on the patient, even after the medics arrived on the scene. On June 24, 2018, Captain Updogger received a memo from Officer Zagorski, and Officer Zagorski kind of explained what happened. They were dispatched to the Ace Lodge in reference to a male subject that was unresponsive. Upon arrival, they found the male subject lying on the ground outside one of the rooms. What apparently happened, he was sitting on a chair. The witnesses saw that he was looking sick. They gave him coffee and a cigarette and passed out, hit his head on the brick, and he started bleeding. The subject had bled from an injury on his forehead, and without hesitation, Officer Pruitt began CPR until medics arrived. The medics began assessing the patient and requested that someone continue with chest compressions. Officer Blomquist volunteered without hesitation to continue with the chest compressions until he was relieved by Officer Zagorski. A short time later, the medics told him to stop so they could check for heartbeat. When it was determined that the patient's heart was beating on its own, the officers assisted in getting him loaded onto the ambulance. Before the ambulance left, the medics advised the officers that the patient was starting to breathe on his own. I spoke with Officer Zagorski a few days later, and he informed me that the patient was recovering well. Had it not been for the immediate actions and teamwork by these officers, the patient would have probably died that day. It is my recommendation that the officers be given accommodation for their life-saving efforts during this incident. It is always a pleasure to have these incidents of this nature come to my attention. I'm proud and pleased in the way these officers performed that day. We don't do this often, Mayor, Commissioners, City Manager, so I'd like to present to the officers accommodation signed by myself and Lieutenant Baker. She had to leave. There's an incident in town, and she can't be here, but I signed it, and she signed it, and it reads, please come up here. I know they were praising Officer Peru a while ago, but these three words were really good. They were good shape. This goes to Officer Dr. Blomquist for immediate life-saving.
Chief, excuse me for interrupting. Is there any way you can do the presentation standing in front of the microphone so we can pick it up for the...
Oh, sorry.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
Presented to certificate of accommodation presented to Officer Jaffe Blomquist for immediate life-saving CPR performed upon a victim on June 24, 2018, signed by Lieutenant Erica Baker and by myself, Chief Randall Aragon. Jaffe, congratulations. Certificate of accommodation presented to Officer Alpha Diva Peru, also known as Alpha, for immediate life-saving CPR performed upon a victim on June 24, 2018. Certificate of accommodation presented to Officer Anthony Zagorski for immediate life-saving CPR performed upon a victim on June 24, 2018. Anthony's been here 5 years, the other two, Jaffe and Alpha, have been here 1 year. I'm really proud of these warriors. They're doing a great job, and they're in good shape, too. I love that. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations, officers. You made yourselves proud, your families proud, and you certainly have made the department proud in this city. So thank you for what you all did. The next item is number 2 under presentations, presentation related to the Copper Flat Mine, and our presenter is Mr. Max Ye.
Good morning, Commissioners, and thank you very much for letting me present this public statement about the Copper Flat Mine. My name is Max Ye. I've lived in Hillsborough for about 30 years. I'm here to speak for myself, obviously, but also on behalf of PAWA, which is the Percha Animas Watershed Association, a group of about 100 to 150 local residents extending into Animas Creek, Caballo, and Array. And it's an organization which almost doesn't exist, but it's all composed of people who oppose the coming of the mine. I'm also speaking for my clients in the Array Food Pantry, which I've directed for about 150 years, right? 15 years or so. I organized and formed this thing, and we've run continuously. We have about anywhere from 70 to 120 households that we service. And I speak for them on behalf of the fact that many of these people need work in Sierra County. So I'm sensitive to the issue of jobs. And I'm also here because I'm very surprised by the lack of information in the public discussion about the mine. It seems to me that people are just jumping on the bandwagon without knowing where the bandwagon is going. I'm surprised because you only have to listen to what New Mexico Copper Corporation, or the MAC, says to see that there are lots of possible problems coming up. And on the basis of listening to what New Mexico Copper says, it seems to me that most local people looking for jobs will not find them at the mine. It seems to me also that economic conditions in the county will be very limited, and I think that what we gain might be very slight in this county. But I am absolutely certain that what we give up just to have a chance at that gain is very large. So could we go on to the next slide? Is there a button I push? Or do we just... It doesn't just flip from slide to slide? You can't put it on a slideshow and press the button? Okay. All right, New Mexico Copper says it will create 270 jobs, right? Jeff Smith said that this morning, and it's over the 11 years of the duration of the mine. But New Mexico Copper also says that a third of these people will come from further away than 75 miles. That's a radius of 75 miles. Now these are, I take it, the real professionals of the industry, the managers, the experts, the supervisors, etc. That leaves 180, not 270, 180 skilled and unskilled jobs for people within a 75-mile radius, which includes Silver City, Deming, Socorro, Las Cruces, and us. So it's not 270 jobs, it's not even 180 jobs for local people. Given that only 10% of the workforce at the construction of the spaceport was from Sierra County, we would be very lucky to see 50 to 100 new local jobs. So the numbers are, in fact, quite a bit smaller than we're led to expect. Now, 50 to 100 local jobs is significant, and would be significant if we got them, if they were true. But it is not true, because most of these jobs are already promised to other people. You heard Jeff Smith say this morning in his comment that New Mexico Copper is open to hiring the Jicarilla Apaches because they are open to hiring and are not discriminatory. But that is not actually the complete story. Can we go on to the next slide, which is this one? New Mexico Copper has contracted to give preference in hiring to Jicarilla Apaches. Could we go back to that last, wait a second, where are we? Okay, so this is the first page of the agreement between the Jicarilla Apache Nation and the New Mexico Copper Corporation, and it came into effect in 2015. Article 21 of this agreement is titled Policy Statement of Indian Preference, and it says, it's way down, it's not being shown on it, but Article 21 says, New Mexico Copper hereby supports and endorses the policy of the nation and shall reasonably consult with the nation to give preference in employment to members of the nation and to maximize utilization of tribal members. That's not just a non-discriminatory statement. This is a preferential statement. In to maximize utilization of tribal members in all available employment opportunities. It is the intent of New Mexico Copper to build a core group of skilled labor candidates through job placement and training assistance to eligible enrolled members of the nation. And there are 3,000 eligible enrolled members of the nation. So most workers at the mine will be from outside Sierra County. So it seems to me that governmental organizations in the county, as yourselves or the Sierra County Commissioners, should be sensitive to, first, to the people in the county, that is, to the 8% unemployed in Tier C, or the over 2,000 people who live here on less than $10,000 a year. That's our primary responsibility before we think about, jobs for people outside the county. But some people will say that that's fine, because the workers coming here will spend their salaries here, and we will get an economic boost. Could we have the next slide, please? This is what we call trickle economy. Will these outside workers spend millions of dollars in Tier C? But you perhaps have not heard of Copper Flat Village. Copper Flat Village is what I call the company town that New Mexico Copper might build at the mine. And I say might because New Mexico Copper's owner, Kevin Maloney, who also owns the MAC and also owns lots of other companies, he made his fortune building company villages at remote mining sites in Australia. And you think he won't do that here? That's what he does best. And we know how a company town works. The worker gets his paycheck and then gives it back to the company to buy the services the company provides. So we have the next slide. This is a picture of an Australian mining camp built by the MAC Services. This is in Karratha, West Australia. It has 200 fully furnished rooms with television and Wi-Fi. It has maid service. It has a restaurant. It has a store. It has a bar and tavern. It has a laundry. It is fully equipped with kinetic exercise rooms. It has a swimming pool and an outdoor recreation area. I would say that this is a perfect model for the Copper Flat Village. Next slide, please. New Mexico Copper says that it will build Copper Flat Village if the market is there. And what does that mean? It means that if the money can be made, New Mexico Copper, not TRC, will make it. That seems to me fairly clear. Next, please. New Mexico Copper says it will mine for 11 years, but New Mexico Copper can't run for 11 straight years because copper prices fluctuate. Now, mining engineers are all very clear what they mean. They need an operating time period to make plans, estimate costs, answer questions from investors and regulators, but people on the ground here seem not to understand that this does not mean consecutive years. New Mexico Copper can only mine when they make money. Wait a second, we're not at the ready yet, the rest, it doesn't matter. So in 1982, Quintana, who last worked Copper Flat mined for only 3 months because they carried a 20% debt and the price of copper didn't make mining worth it. Only 3 months. New Mexico Copper is also carrying a 20% debt, and their break-even price is pretty high, which is what this slide is about. New Mexico's target operating price is $3 a pound. However, the average copper price for the last 100 years or more is only $2.50 a pound, and there's been no consecutive 11 years above $3 a pound ever. Today's price is $2.65, And 2 years ago, it was less than $2 a pound. So when is Copper Flat going to actually operate? Now add to this financial factor the reality that New Mexico Copper has only enough water rights to run 3 months every year. I think we can say that operation will be intermittent, and so will tax revenues that mine boosters drool over. So stop and go mining means people's lives are what? Disrupted, the economy is stressed, social services and food pantries such as mine can't cope because people are going out of work all the time. It means that every hiring ends in a firing. Stop and go mining means that workers repeatedly lose their paychecks. Bills go unpaid, mortgages and rents become overdue. It means struggling to find a new niche in TRC. This is the reason that when Copper Flat Mine operated in 1982, although some lucky individuals in TRC made a lot of money, TRC generally and the county did not benefit. In 1982, the median income in this county did not increase because every gain was followed by a loss. In 1982, mining in this county brought in less money than tourism, which has always been our best economic sector. It was behind tourism, retail, agriculture, and government. Mining brought in the fifth of 7 sectors in terms of the amount of money brought into this county. It is not a great deal. Stop and go mining, in fact, may just be a no-go mining because 9 companies have owned Copper Flat over 65 years, and it has operated only 3 months in 65 years. So this is not a great mine. So one of the reasons that it may be, in fact, a no-go situation is because of New Mexico Copper's finances. Working capital is in a huge negative amount. Working capital is the current assets minus the liabilities. This was the amount, 81 million a year ago. It's probably over 90 million now. The estimated cost of construction in 2013 was 360 million. It's probably 400 million now. And the max share price is 6 cents, which is good because a few years ago it was 1 cent. And let's see, for 8 years now, the MAC has been trying to find finances, and it has essentially failed. The last live offer was from a Chinese mining company in 2016, and this is the announcement by the MAC of the letter of intent. And this deal fell through after 4 months. So the mine is for sale. All right. So next. So what will it cost us to get these few temporary and socially damaging jobs? It will cost us water and water rights. And how much water and how much water rights? So next, please. New Mexico Copper wants to use 2 billion gallons a year. That's 22 billion gallons during mining. This is 4 times as much water as TRC uses. TRC nevertheless generates financial and economic benefits many, many times what New Mexico Copper's use of water will bring. Think of how many jobs there are in TRC, and they are all dependent on TRC having water, having your 40-year water plan. So New Mexico Copper's use of water is completely inefficient in bringing well-being. It is extravagant and wasteful of water, which is the single most important resource we have. We cannot live without water, and everyone living in the desert should know that. Some say we should exploit our resources, but we are giving away our water for free, not to mention giving away the copper for free. That's not how to bring in revenue. Some will say that water is only a problem for those downstream of the mine in the southern part of the county. This is not so. Water comes from the water mine wants to use comes from wells near the Caballo Reservoir, and its damage to the Rio Grande River may force the release of more water from Elephant Butte, which is above you, and lower water levels there and here. Water-starved farms in the south of the county are going out of business, and that decline is already felt in the gross receipts tax received in Tier C. I was in Hatch the other day, and the farmers are all angry about the mine's proposed use of water. Depletion of water will further depress the economy in Tier C. Try to imagine a healthy economy without water. I've heard people say that that's not a problem if the mine's not going to open anyway. But that's wrong. That's a misunderstanding of New Mexico water laws. New Mexico Copper wants the water rights, just like Augustine Plains Ranch. And the biggest folly of all is to give away our water rights. May I have the next slide, please? Water rights are limited. If New Mexico Copper gets the water rights, the county, no one in the county, not TRC, will get any more. New Mexico's copper rights will leave the county. New Mexico Copper Rights has claimed enough water rights. New Mexico Copper has claimed enough water rights to be worth $70 million, almost enough to cover their debt. TRC cannot afford to buy them from New Mexico Copper when the mining is over. So the rights will be sold out of county, probably to Las Cruces. There will not be any more rights available in the county. No more rights means no more development. Unlike talk about jobs and revenues, this outcome is absolute. There is no uncertainty about water shortage, and there's no uncertainty about water right limitation. The Lower Rio Grande Basin was established in 1987 because this area was fully appropriated, which means that all the water in the ground was already spoken for in already established water rights. The Water Adjudication Court understood this problem of granting New Mexico Copper the rights it falsely claimed, and the court protected all our water rights in the basin by invalidating the claims. Now, some people in this county seem not to appreciate this protection and damn the court for protecting our futures. Why does anyone want to facilitate and encourage the mine to take away our futures? I haven't even mentioned the contamination threat of 113 million tons of heavily polluted slurry and wastewater held back by a 2-mile-long sand embankment. If the mine comes in, the only inflow of revenue might be New Mexico taxpayers' dollars paying for a Superfund cleanup. Is that the kind of jobs and revenues people hope for?
Mr. Yak?
Yeah.
That was the 20 minutes.
Okay, fine. I have just one last closing statement then. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
So our future lies, it seems to me, in development of recreation and tourism, of hunting and fishing, the management of our mountains, rivers, lakes, forests, deserts, our wildlife, our air and climate, not in their destruction. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any commissioner have any questions or thoughts? Commissioner Heschler.
Thank you, Mr. Yeah, I just have one question for you. In your oration, you didn't mention anything about the lawsuit with Texas.
Yeah.
The groundwater lawsuit. Do you have just maybe a minute or two that you can explain that and how this may affect that lawsuit, or?
Yeah, yes, this is a pretty complicated question you've asked, Mr.
Keep it
Heschler.
very
Okay.
precise if you could.
All right, so a few years ago, actually, God, it has such a long history. The fight over the water of the Rio Grande has been going on for hundreds of years, and the finals, it's never settled. There's always a settlement, and then it's never settled because people sue. And in this last case, Texas is suing New Mexico because it claims, and Texas has been joined by the federal government. They claim that New Mexico has been allowing wells near the Rio Grande to pump a lot of water and draw the water from the river, and therefore the river was not carrying all the water it's supposed to Texas and points south. The mines wells are in fact 2 miles from the Rio Grande, and their effects will reach the river. So the mines wells, one of the things that is being disputed in the litigation. If Texas wins, they've asked for a huge amount of liability. They're saying we're damaging their crops, we're damaging their economy, and New Mexico will have to pay for that up front in terms of money, and also it will have to restore the flow to the Rio Grande, which will cost us a lot of water. I know a lot of people in New Mexico say, well, that's our water, but it's not really our water in a sense. You know, it's Colorado's water if you want to think about it. And if you play the game that, oh, well, it's flowing through here, we can dam it up and use it all, then New Mexico will end up with no water because Colorado can dam the river up there and we'd get nothing. So in order for everybody to operate, you have to have these kinds of agreements. And Texas is balking at how we're treating that agreement. So yes, when I said that if the mine damages the river, then more water will have to be released from Elephant Butte. That's a possible outcome of this if we lose the suit. And I have to say that the facts seem to be against us. I mean, we are pumping a lot of water out of the ground near the river, and it's pretty clear that we're drawing water from the river. What New Mexico has said as of, I think, last summer was to say, well, but by New Mexico laws, we treat river water differently from the way we treat groundwater, and there are separate laws in place for these things, so they're not connected. But hydrologically, I think everyone understands they are connected. Yeah.
Anyone else? I do have one, Mr. Ye. You have mentioned Hatch.
Yes.
I believe Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead was on that tour with me and Commissioner Clark, and I don't know what other commissioners were there. So we did a tour of the mine, and I don't remember what year it was, so I'll tell you that right now. And the gentleman who was doing the tour said that they had already, in preparation for the mine to be open, and you had talked about this 75-mile area and stuff like that, that they had contracted out or had made arrangements with, I would call them a straw boss, someone who you pay per head to deliver workers to your job site, and because they don't have cars, they bust them in, and then they do their work, and they get paid, or get paid at the end of the week, but they bust them out every day. They don't live there. They don't live anywhere except where they're coming from, which would be the Hatch area. Did the gentleman who gave us this tour and said that, did he misspeak do you know anything about this? Because to me, I blanched. Because we're talking about a project in Sierra County, we're talking about recommending getting jobs for our residents, and here, one of the gentlemen who was involved in the mine is telling us that they've already made arrangements for buses to come out of Hatch.
Yeah.
Did you hear anything about that? Is that a
I'm sorry,
misspeak?
I don't know specifically anything about that, but I do know that, first of all, I think you have to understand that when the mine talks about hiring, there are two different things. There is the hiring for mining during the years of operation, and then there's this big sort of construction job which has to go on, right? And the construction job actually takes many more people, but it lasts only, a very short time. And I think in the mine's projections, at least in the draft environmental impact statement, in the construction phase, they're talking about a lot of people flooding in here from workers coming in from all over. So, yeah, that's all I can know about it.
Okay, thank you. No other
May of
questions?
14 was when they took that tour.
Of 14, so that was before the contract that was signed with the tribe for the water and giving
Yes, right, yeah,
reference
yeah,
to
right.
their
Right,
possibility
yeah.
of employment and training
Yes.
them and stuff like
Right.
that.
I mean, you could ask Jeff, he would know.
Well, unfortunately, he's not on the agenda right now.
Okay.
But, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
If there's no further questions.
I do have copies of this whole talk, if
If
you'd
you
like.
could put it in the black box there, or leave it next if it's too much. Yeah, just leave it right there, next to
Well,
the
let
black
me-
box. Appreciate it. And possibly you might want to leave 2 extras, 1 for each newspaper. You might want to take a look at it, don't know. And for 5 for the commission and 1 for the clerk's office as well. Okay, thank you very much. Moving on, the next item is for the consent calendar, which consists of 3 items. I would like the 3rd item pulled, which is approve the Municipal League recommended Code of Ethics, because unless we read it and let the public know what it is, they have no idea what we're voting on. So I would like to entertain a motion for approval on the consent calendar of number 1, accounts payable of August 2018, and of the appointment of Mark Shipley to the Airport Advisory Board.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve the consent calendar, which consists of F1 and 2 as noted.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second by Commissioner Hessler. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. It carries unanimously. The next item is F3. I felt it was important that the public have an understanding of what we're doing, because this is kind of not self-explanatory. Basically, this comes from the Municipal League, which they are strongly recommending that we adopt. We are probably the only one of the 3 communities in the state that does not have a code of ethics for its governing body, and this is just house cleaning and bringing us up to date. Basically what it says is, as a member of this governing body, I will represent the interests of all people served by this municipality, not use the organization or my service on the governing body for my own personal advantage or for the individual advantage of my friends or supporters, to keep confidential information confidential, to approach all governing body issues with an open mind, prepared to make the best decision for the whole municipality, do nothing to violate the trust of those who selected me or of those we serve, to focus my efforts on the mission of the municipality and not on my personal goals. And the last is to never exercise authority as a governing body member except when acting in a meeting with the full governing body or as I am delegated by the governing body. And that's what we will be voting on right now as part 3 of our consent calendar. I will stand for a motion for approval of the Code of Ethics. I will make that motion that the Commission approve the Municipal League's recommended Code of Ethics. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
I have a second by Commissioner Clark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item is G1, discussion action, resolution number 10, 2018-2019, authorizing and approving submission of a completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Water Authority Trust Board for water system improvements, and our presenter is Ms. Tracy Burnett, who is our grants projects coordinator.
Good morning, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, and Manager Canton. I'm here before you to request approval of the required resolution so that the city can submit an application to Water Trust Board. This application would be for our Morgan Street booster station, water booster station, and this would replace our booster pumps, some of the plumbing, electrical, and telemetry up there at the Morgan Street water booster station. We're going to request $350,000. Our hope is to combine this application along with a Colonius application cycle that'll be coming up as well. The $350,000 that we're requesting, the majority of that would be for construction. Even though we're coming before the commission for Water Trust Board application first, the application cycle for Water Trust Board opens and processes through first. However, Colonius actually does their awards prior to Water Trust Board. So we will be coming back before the commission to do a Colonius application, probably in the amount of around $80,000 to $100,000 for more of the plan and design. So at this time, I stand for any questions. Arnie, our Water Department Director, is also here if you have questions regarding.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, Ms. Burnett. What part of this, is there any part that the city's going to have to come up with to match any of these funding?
So Water Trust Board is a 10% match, 10% loan. They can up that to 20% if they do determine that we're able to handle that burden. So it is a 10-10.
This would be determined for the 18-19 period, so this would be on next year's budget or this year's budget?
Right, so the Water Trust Board would be, their award or readiness to proceed would come out in June.
Okay. So it'd be next year's budget?
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? So, Ms. Burnett, if we get the 350 and then we get the 80, so the project is pegged around $430,000 to $440,000. Is that
correct?
Following up on Commissioner Clark's question.
Now, do bear in mind, obviously, that we have not hired an engineer. All of that would have to be, so these are estimated funds, but we feel we did estimate pretty close. We've reached out to a few, and Arnie.
Okay. Any other further questions? If not, I will stand for a motion for approval.
Mayor Green, I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Commissioner
I'd
Kessler?
like to move that we approve resolution number 10, 2018/2019, authorizing and approving submission of the completed application for financial assistance and project approval to the New Mexico Finance Authority Water Trust Board for water system improvements, as presented by Tracy Burnett, our grant projects coordinator.
I have a motion by Commissioner Hessler.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green?
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead?
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Hessler?
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark?
Aye.
Honorable Paul Baca?
Yes.
Carries unanimously.
Thank you.
The next item is G3, discussion action, resolution number 12, 2018-2019, directing the publication of the title and general summary of the subject matter of ordinance number 699, pledging certain revenues to the repayment of a loan for the defeance and refunding of the 2016 loan from the New Mexico Finance Authority for the construction and improvement of the Sierra Vista Hospital, including the approval of the amendment to the original loan agreement. Manager Cantor, are you going to take this one?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
members of the commission. As you can see in the background, the member entities, which are the City of TRC, Sierra County, Village of Williamsburg, and City of Elephant Butte, and also the Sierra Vista Hospitals Joint Powers Commission, all adopted the ordinance to obtain the loan for the construction and improvement of the new hospital. Attached, what we have is a resolution that calls for the publication and a notice of meeting to intent to adopt ordinance 699, where all of the entities have been requested to adopt. The hospital as originally planned was more expensive than they needed, and they felt that the funds to pay the loan that they wanted was to working on the refunding of the loans. So the refunding with this ordinance would be reduced from $30,220,000 down to $25,495,991, which is included in that ordinance. It'll still be a repayment from the GRT revenues, and which are already imposed by each entity. So so it will change the projection of those revenues that are paid. As you can see on there, it also includes the approval of the amendment to the original loan agreement. And what they have requested is two separate motions, one to approve the resolution, should you decide to proceed, and one to approve the amendment to the original loan agreement. With that, I'll open it for any questions, and I'll turn it over to our City Attorney Jay Rubin, who has some additional information.
Yeah, I would just mention, in fact, Ms. Canton and I had a conversation with the attorneys who drew this up yesterday, and they are going to be present when we have the final hearing on the ordinance. I think it's very important in case of some legal questions you may have. I'm here to try to help you as best I can, but of course, with the following hearing, I'll feel more comfortable with the actual drafters of the ordinance being here. So, you know, there is a deadline to get this done, so we are in favor of just agreeing now to go with the approving the resolution, which would then allow us to get the publication of the ordinance, and then we would come back in October for the final consideration, at which time the voting law firm will be present.
Okay, any questions?
And I agree with, they have emphasized, sorry, yeah, I agree with Ms. Canton, they have emphasized that they want two separate motions on this.
Okay. Any questions, concerns? Hearing none, I will stand for motions one and then motion number two.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 12-1819, a resolution directing the publication of the title and general summary of the subject matter of an ordinance pledging certain revenues to the repayment of a loan for the deficient and refunding of the 2016 loan from the New Mexico Finance Authority for the construction and improvement of the Sierra Vista Hospital, as presented and noted by Manager Canton.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead and a second by...
Question.
Can we second it first and then have discussion? Oh, you did? Okay, sorry.
Attorney Rubin,
Yes.
is what Mayor Pro Tem just put out there as a motion, is that cover the first part of it?
Yes, and then we'll have a second motion, I would think, on the repayment. That's why I understand your intention was.
So the second motion would be just the last sentence on this?
Yes, it would be part of the, in fact, if you look at the agenda item, where it says including the approval of the amendment.
So the including the approval would be the second motion?
Correct, that's what my understanding is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second and discussion for going to publication. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
This is a publication.
It's a resolution.
You're actually approving the resolution which contemplates you're going to go to publication.
Oh, okay, I thought when we go to publication, you don't need that, but obviously I'm wrong.
Yes, well, they did it, their attorney firm did it through a resolution.
Okay.
So that requires...
Can we have roll call, Madam Clerk, please?
Honorable Steve Green.
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Paul Bach.
Yes. Carries unanimously. Now I'll stand for the second motion, please.
The approval of the amendment?
Yeah.
Mayor Green, I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Mayor Green, I'd like to move that we approve the amendment to the original loan agreement, as presented by Manager Council.
Is that enough, Jay, to cover and make everyone happy?
I think, I would even maybe the title of
Or
the
just,
agreement to
just
amend.
read what we have in front of us?
I would actually say agreement to amend the prepayment terms related to the loan agreement dated May 24, 2016. That's what the title says.
Yeah, that's the title.
Okay.
We have it here.
Yeah.
Let me change my motion to read that I move to approve the agreement to amend prepayment terms related to the loan agreement dated May 24, 2016.
And I second that motion.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Hessler and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Is there any further discussion? This is not a resolution, right? So all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Moving on, H1, discussion action approval to proceed forward allocating city funds for McAdoo/Sims Infrastructure Improvement Project Phase Number 1, identified as McAdoo Streets between Daniels and Clancy, and our presenter is Ms. Tracy Burnett, our Grants Projects Coordinator.
Good morning again, Mayor Pro Tem, Commissioners, and Manager Canton. Just a real quick point of correction. When I gave the clerk's office the description, I should have extended that from Clancy up to Main. So it's actually Daniels Street and Main Street, and that's just simply because of the way the water line runs to connect into our main. So you guys were presented, I believe Mario from Wilson and Company had done a presentation to the commission, and we spoke of doing a large all-in-one project that would address city streets, water, and sewer lines, and broke that project into phases. And so this particular area is phase 1. It's the section that is behind City Hall and in front of the police department. And it only addresses the streets and the water lines. There is no sewer that runs behind there. It's really important for the point of funding purposes, especially with the next item on the agenda, that even though we're doing a collaboration with our streets department and our water department, it is definitely two separate projects. So it's the water line replacement in there, and then it's some streets repaving. And in separating those as two separate projects, we're not combining the street department funds and we're not combining water department funds. We're also avoiding maybe environmentals that would have to be run by DOT standards and stuff that would be in the next item on the agenda. So the overall cost estimation for that phase with total of water and streets estimates out to around $500,000. That's split in our streets department performing a lot of the work themselves. There might be some sections where they may have to contract out because they don't have the proper equipment, or maybe the knowledge for certain areas or something that they're addressing that they may not be comfortable with. And then the water portion would be contracted out. We would also procure engineering services for the plan and design. The next item on the agenda would require engineer stamp and approval, and anytime we're getting into a project over $100,000, we need to look at engineering plans for that project. So the way that the cost would split would be within our water department, because they're going to be requiring a lot more of the extensive work. They would also be procuring the engineering services from our water fund. And contract out to a contractor to come in and do the replacement of the water lines. And the engineering services would give us the plan design as well as some project oversight to make sure the project is completed to the proper standards. The streets department has been awarded, as the next item on the agenda, some funding towards some streets improvement in that area. And so depending on how you proceed forward with this item, then we would like to look at taking those funds that they were awarded to put towards the streets improvements, as well as within their budget. The previous manager Fuentes had put within the streets department budget money towards this project. Water department would be looking at their ending cash balance to see if they could put money towards the project as well. We're waiting for some final numbers on that. And so what we're asking the commission at this time is to approve us to move forward if the departments have that funding within their budget, to let us proceed forward with finalizing the numbers and looking at moving towards this project as an all-in-one. That's completely at the commission's discretion at this point. And I can stand for questions. I'm sure you guys have a lot. I do have water, streets, as well as our engineer here to help answer all your questions.
Thank you. Questions, concerns? I'll just maybe start the ball rolling, Ms. Burnett. What happens if the departments, the individual departments, don't have the money to complete the project? We're obviously not going to start something unless we know we got the money to complete it and leave the streets open and bare. So, yeah, I know, I believe I heard you say that Manager Fuentes had put some money aside.
We believe the money that was allocated for the streets is enough to cover.
Okay. So
And
it's the water, that's...
it was our understanding that that was going to be put within the water budget as well. And we believe that the water ending cash balance does have the funding to do that. But we haven't received final answers on that at this time. And so we don't want to say, yes, they have it.
So basically, that's internal?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
All right, thank you. All right, that answers my question.
It's not my intention to have to go out to any type of loan to complete this project.
Okay, so do you have any sense, since this is an internal question and answer, how long a period of time it will take before you can tell us, we got the money, we're ready to go?
I think that Arnie is going to be meeting, I think Arnie is hopefully going to be meeting this week or possibly the latest next week with finance, just to ensure our concern. Part of our concern, of course, is the timeline with this project. And so the reason we are asking the commissioners to allow us to proceed forward if the funding is there is because of our water table. We want to be able to, if we are able to make a definite, yes, there's money in the water budget, we know that the streets department has the money, we want to proceed forward with going out to RFP for the contractors for the water and get started on the project while our water table is low. The longer we wait, we're going to be moving the length of time, farther in towards when that water may be turned on again.
Got it. All right, thank you for that. Yes, sir, Commissioner Heschler.
Yes, sir. So what you're asking for us today is to allow you to proceed forward with the allocating funds and figuring out how much it's going to cost, but you'll come back before us again for the final.
It is our intention that if you guys are approving of this project and we know the funds are there, what we would like to know is if we can proceed forward with your guys' blessing with the provisions that the funds are within the water department.
I'd like to see what the funds are, the final funds are. I mean, I don't have a problem giving you permission to proceed forward to get the money, to figure out how much.
Then we can bring it back before the commission on the 26th.
What the finals are and how that will affect those budgets.
Okay, then we can bring it back in front of the commission on the 26th and just really push. Pardon?
Would that slow you up? I mean, you can still continue with the process and.
I'm going to refer, because he's got the timeline, so.
Mayor and Commissioners, it's going to make it very difficult because one of the design elements that require engineering is a water tie-in to Main Avenue, which is DOT right-of-way. And I'd be happy to email you the checklist so you familiarize yourself with the number of activities or documentation that needs to go in. So we are risking time. If you look at schedule, we are looking, everything is tied to the first week of November, being able to give notice of proceed. As we know, we have upfront administrative efforts associated with getting your bonds, getting your contracts executed with the contractor, so we lose a couple of weeks. Now we're into mid-November. By the time we get started, we hit a holiday. So we have a very finite window between November and March. What I would suggest, which is very common, and you've got the attorney here, he can confirm or deny, is an approval contingent on the funding being in place, so it doesn't put this commission at risk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I might interject just a little bit. I did discuss it a bit with the finance director, and she couldn't attend today because she had an important meeting with the Palms and Associates. But we will schedule a meeting tomorrow and secure the funding that we need. We'll review the water department, as Ms. Burnett said, and proceed. And as he said, I would highly recommend that we go ahead and approve to proceed pending the outcome of the funding.
And I personally think that's very, very good advice, frankly. So are there any further questions?
I guess.
Commissioner Clark.
So, Ms. Burnett, correct me if my assumptions are wrong, and I don't like assumptions, so you can all pop in here. But, you know, being a little bit familiar with that territory down there, I want to make a comment that, you know, if it were the worst area actually is Sims, not McAdoo. And it just dawned on me the reason you probably chose McAdoo first, and I want to put that out there and correct and just give me a yay or a nay. But it seems to me that if we're just dealing with the area tying into the Main Street DOT and going down a street that's basically just water, that when we start digging up that dirt, we're going to see the compaction of the dirt. We're going to understand just exactly what we're dealing with when we get into the other downtown streets as far as that being put back together. And that it would be quicker to do just the water line than to do a street where we're going water, sewer, and hot springs drainage, which is what Sims would be, which could be we're not familiar with how bad that's going to be quite yet. So am I correct in that's the reasoning why you chose McAdoo?
Correct. When it gets to the sewer lines, for starters, that's a whole different animal. Part of it being, of course, we're not going to be able to change the flow direction on a sewer line because it's got to connect. And so we really want to find out what's under that ground and what kind of things that we're going to encounter, as well as with our hot ditch. We know when we did the Healing Waters Plaza, we found a wooden line. You know, so this is kind of the pilot project to see what we are going to encounter and whether this is something that in the future maybe our departments can work towards doing themselves at a cost savings, or whether what we encounter is going to be something that we're better off having contractor and contingency and everything else within construction. And I'll let Mario expand more on that.
Right.
I will only add, because she did a very good job of elaborating. You might recall, we just spent a whole lot of time during the presentation a couple of weeks ago. There's other technologies that really hadn't been discussed with staff that we've discussed internally, specific to sewer, where we can maybe look at some pipe bursting. And we don't have to get into the water table issues, and so we're going to learn a lot just by uncovering that. So the approach may change on items like sewer and even water as we learn more. So I just want to remind everybody that there's more that we'll be looking at.
Right, and I commend the concept of doing the street and the water department together at the same time, and so why these resolutions are together. So when we're tearing up the street, we've got both of the departments ready to put it back together as quickly as possible instead of leaving it open. The concern being, of course, is the busy season. The best time, obviously, is when we're not irrigating downstream or we're not letting water out of the dam, because then that does lower the water table in town, and we all know that. But I do have a little concern that we want to do it as quickly as possible, because this is the busy season for the hot springs downtown, and you're going to be tearing up right in front of Sierra Grande's entrance.
Correct.
And so that being a consideration, Commissioner Heschler, is the concern I have, is I don't want to put this off any further, because November and December are a little slower than January, February, and March. And that being said, I really would encourage all of us to allow you to proceed, provided that we can have the budget monies, and that they're convinced, you know, each one of us could go into finance separately and convince ourselves if we needed to. Is that correct, Manager Canton?
Yes.
So, And I think it's a really good first effort to do the all-in-one, to realize that this is something we really can do. I mean, we don't know if we're going to run AC water pipe down in there, or, you know, some of these other things that we could find that could be an issue. So those are just comments I wanted to make, and I really want to say thank you for thinking this through the way you did, and that you're willing to take a step forward on this one. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good points. I just have one final question, Ms. Burnett. Do you foresee at any time that this project would prevent people from driving into the parking lot of the Sierra Grande, or at least having access to the Sierra Grande by foot?
I'm going to refer that to Mario, as he's going to be the one possibly looking into that, providing we procure his services, but he's been an awesome assistance for us.
Good.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett. Mayor and Commission, absolutely, we're going to work with the local adjacent businesses, and we will maintain access.
Oh, good. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. All right, thank you very much. Any further concerns? Hearing none, I will stand for a motion of approval contingent upon the funds being there in the water department.
Mr. Mayor, I move for approval to proceed forward allocating city funds for McAdoo Sims Infrastructure Improvement Project Phase 1, identified as McAdoo Street between Daniel Street and Clancy Street, contingent on funds being made available. And this is all noted as per Tracy Burnett, for Grant Projects Coordinator.
May I amend that motion?
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Sure.
It's Daniels to Maine.
Is that correct? You made?
Yeah, correct, because of that water line connection.
Daniels to Maine, excuse me. I amend that motion. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll second that
I
motion.
have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead and a second by Commissioner Clark. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all is in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item is G2, which we've now made H2, and everything else will be moved down a number, is the discussion action resolution number 11, 2018-2019, directing the publication of the, no, I beg your pardon, my skipped here. Resolution number 11, 2018-2019, authorizing participation in capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation. And once again, our presenter is Ms. Burnett.
Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Commissioners. So this will tie into the previous project. What we're requesting is approval of the resolution to accept the funds, the capital appropriation that was allocated to the city. The appropriation was to plan, design, construct, and improve streets, including curbs, drainage, and sidewalk accessibility in Truth or Consequences, to be used as part of the Sims and McAdoo Infrastructure Improvement Project. The actual grant application that we received of the appropriation was for street improvements within the downtown area. So what we're requesting from the commission is to use this $100,000 specifically to tie in with this project to help our streets, because as we know, they don't produce a revenue. So if we can put this money towards that, that'll help offset their costs as well. And I think that was all on that. We can stand for questions.
Questions, concerns? If I'm not mistaken, this was out of the capital outlay from Representative Dow
Correct.
last year.
Yes.
I just have one question, and we brought this up at the agenda meeting. It says total project cost is $100,000.
Correct. So our project cost versus our award amount are two separate things. So our award is $100,000.
Okay.
We're not pairing this with any other awards that were given. So that's where that's just their wording within the resolution.
Okay, I thought, boy, that's...
Like the animal shelter. The animal shelter had multiple awards within that project.
Got it. Okay. Very good. Okay. Any further questions? Hearing none, I will stand for a motion for approval.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 11, 2018-2019, authorizing participation in capital outlay program administered by the New Mexico Department of Transportation, as presented and noted by Tracy Burnett, our Grant Projects Coordinator.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead, a second by Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, can we have roll call, please?
Honorable Steve Green.
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Hessler.
Yes.
Honorable Kathy Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Paul Baca.
Yes.
Carries unanimously.
Thank
very
you.
much, and thanks for all your effort. Appreciate it. H number 2, now it's actually number 3, discussion action, standard operating procedures for animal control, and our presenter is the Chief Aragon.
Mayor, City Commissioners, and City Manager. First would be the animal shelter and animal control SOP. You were sent that. Spent a lot of work, many hours, tweaking something that was, this is a model from Valencia County's animal shelter, animal control operations, which we've been using actually since our shelter opened, which is late April of this year. It contains many best practices throughout the animal control and animal welfare environment, and I believe it'd be a good idea to have the commission officiate it, so we know that we're on something that's on the right track. And my staff, Lieutenant Baker, Sabrina Sissi, Captain Apodaca, we've reviewed it several times. We've had meetings. We've actually used this since April, but we tweaked it, got the wording right, put it in context, and would like your blessings to proceed and use it. And as you see on the commission action form, I talked it over with our city attorney. Rather than keep bringing it back to the commission, if there's any changes henceforth, I would discuss it with the city manager, and rather than wear out my welcome at the meetings here. If I make
You're always welcome, Chief.
I know, sir. But if I make a sentence change, or Lieutenant Baker or Sabrina Sissi wants to change something, you've officiated it. We'll discuss it with the city manager and get her blessings. So with that, have any questions? If I can't answer it, I've got Lieutenant here, I've got Sabrina here. We can go proceed.
Thank you. Questions? Chief, I do have, on page 7, where it says vaccinations within entry, all healthy dogs over 6 weeks of age are vaccinated within arrival of the shelter. It talks about medications, and I just had one question.
Yes, sir.
Who pays for that?
We do.
That's in your operating budget.
It is. It's part of my budget.
So so I understand, so we pick up someone's dog that's running loose, that's been rabies shot and everything else, but it's on medications or something like that, and we have an additional cost. When the owner of that animal comes back to get the animal from the shelter and bring the animal home, they're not presented with a bill for medication. We have just absorbed that bill. That was my only concern.
Probably Sabrina could help me, or Lieutenant could help me on that. I know that when we bring in unknown animals, we have to vaccinate them. We provide the medications, different types of shots. But,
right.
Good. Lieutenant?
So usually when we get in the running at large, most of them have a collar and some tags. That's how we're able to identify them. Usually through the city clerk, we can go back and look at the numbers, or even through the vet's office, if they've gotten the rabies shot, they have a number as well. Once we identify that they have an owner, then we try to make contact with the owner. We don't necessarily get their medical records. We keep them, try to see if we have an owner. If we notice any medical issues at that point, once it's, past 72 hours and the owner hasn't come to pick up the animal, then we take the animal to the vet to get any kind of medical attention it needs. The only really fee that's charged to an owner is the impound fee, which is the $32.25. But animals that don't have collars or don't have owners, we do vaccinate them, and those are usually put into our adoption process. So those are animals that are unclaimed that we're vaccinating at that point. We don't claim any running at large unless the owner doesn't come back. And then once we find out that the owner's not coming to get it, then we look in to see what shots it's had and if there's any kind of medical condition with that animal at that point.
Okay, thank you.
If that answered your question.
Yes,
sir.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Yeah, Commissioner, Lieutenant Baker, I think we might, one more.
Yes.
Thank you.
This
Sorry.
is probably in here, I did try to read it, but, so if you pick up an animal and the animal is injured, you find the owner, but you've treated the animal first, does that owner then incur the medical bill?
Yes, now, if we get that medical bill and we pay that medical bill, then we basically present that bill to the owner and tell us, well, before you can get your animal back, you're going to have to reimburse us the money that we paid to help your animal. And we actually had that situation. Sabrina can explain that a little better.
We had a dog that got ran over, had a broken front leg, I believe. And we took it to the vet. It got a cast on it. The owner came for it, and I sent him to go pay the vet bill first, and then he'd come get his dog, and then he paid us the impound fee too.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so any other, I beg your pardon. Commissioner Clark.
Clarify this one, and maybe make sure I understood what you said, Chief, is you're just wanting us to give you the blessing for this,
Yes.
but you want to have the stipulation that if you need to change something, you can do that directly with the manager.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I'm okay with that. We discussed that. I thought it was appropriate that the original draft should be brought to you so you can kind of see what we're talking about. But this is not an ordinance or resolution you have to bring back to the commission for future consideration. If you're okay with us doing this administratively.
Kind of like a working
So
document.
basically, we're just saying that we're okay with this
Right.
administratively.
And
Okay.
I checked with Jess Weston, who's the Valencia County, Sabrina, does what she does, and he said that when they put this together a few years ago, they brought it in front of the commission to officiate it, make sure people stood behind it, and didn't have to do that, but they did that, and I'm following suit. Because they're our model, they're our prototype, and we're using them as a mentor.
Thanks, Chief.
Excellent. All right. Stand for motion. Please.
Mayor Green, I'd like to move that we adopt the standard operating procedures for animal control as presented by Chief Randall, with the stipulation that the chief may confer with the city manager to make minor changes to the document if need be.
I have a motion by Commissioner Heschler and a second by
I'll second that motion.
Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, carries unanimously. The next item is, and thank you for that, discussion action, TRC Animal Shelter Volunteer Manual. Chief Aragon.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, another, this is a quantum leap. We've not had this before, and we're trying to move the needle in the right direction to get help for our shelter, for our pets, for our dogs and cats, kittens and puppies. And once again, I reached out to Jess Weston and their crew in Valencia County, and they sent me their ordinance, or not ordinance, their handbook, and spent many hours tweaking it to meet our needs, tailoring it, working with the lieutenant, Sabrina, the captain, and the final product is what you're looking at. Jay, who looked at it, made some corrections and suggestions. It's loaded with nothing but best practices. That's what we're trying to do. And Commissioner Heschler borrowed his brainwaves, and he helped me on. There's a performance evaluation in here, which he mentioned is very important, and I agree that the volunteers that come in, and I'm going to introduce a couple of them in a second, who've been very helpful. We want to make sure we have the right staff, and that it's not a long-term, forever project like a Supreme Court justice, for their life. If they're doing well, they're going to stay with us, and we're going to rate them the first 90 days, and thereafter every 6 months. They're going to be receiving an evaluation from Sabrina, and the volunteer is going to help the volunteer coordinator, and we're going to make sure we're doing the right things all the time, the right things, and that's important to us. So with that, you'll see in there's assistants in the shelter, helping clean the shelter, manage the shelter, greeters, dog socializers, where they actually walk the dogs and play with the dogs. These will be the volunteers, cat socializers, people that help us adopt, market Foster, and so forth. And they all will actually, the volunteers will be actually monitored by the volunteer coordinator, which Robin Brodsky, if you stand up, Robin. Bob Vedetto, be her assistant. I chose Robin, and she's got a background in animal welfare. She was a director of a program. Bob is also, I asked Robin who would she select. She mentioned Bob Vedetto as her assistant. And they're chomping at the bit to help us. And they know all the volunteers. You mentioned one earlier, Diane Lombardo. She's behind us, and she's glad. And it's really, we're getting glowing reviews. And they're helping us out, and the deal would be, they would work, Robin, and sit down there. Thank you, Bob. Robin would actually work under Sabrina, who works under Lieutenant, who works under me. And Robin will actually do the scheduling of the volunteers. They're not going to walk around and say, here I am. It's not going to happen. She's going to have a schedule. Sabrina's going to know who's coming in, what time they're going to be coming in, and so forth. So we have a force multiplier to help us out, no cost to the city, and these folks are very committed. I mean, they are chomping at the bit to help, and it's not in there, but based on, again, Commissioner Hession's ideas, I've already put together a Friends of the Animal Shelter, and Robin has agreed to be the chairman. It's going to be a coalition. It's not going to be a 501c3. No money involved. I saw the commissioner shake his head because that's one thing he mentioned. No money involved, just a coalition. We're going to meet quarterly. Our first meeting is going to be in October. Robin's going to man it as the chairman. Believe it or not, until she leaves, Deb Peters is going to be the vice chair. And 3 other committed folks. We'll have 5. Lieutenant, myself, Sabrina will go to the quarterly luncheon, probably at the Pizza Hut. We'll talk over concerns. They're going to be my advisor. They're going to help us get there right, move that needle in the right direction. So Robin, Bob, I want to thank you both and all your volunteers. So with that, I'm asking for your blessings and approval on this volunteer handbook. If it needs to be tweaked in the future, we'll do that. And again, just like the first one, the SOP, if there's any future changes, I'll discuss it with the city manager, make the changes, and we just need you to officiate. By the way, these both will be the SOP, and my vision is to have the SOP and the handbook on our website. So when we hire a volunteer, we're going to tell them to read it on normal paper. We're not burning trees up anymore. It's going to be on the website, read it, and they're going to sign documents saying they understand it, will comply with it, and so forth. So we have a meeting set up with the city manager and Maribel to make sure it gets on the once it's approved on our website. No more books, no more papers. In fact, we're doing a few things that Valencia County is admiring. One is we have an assistant volunteer coordinator. They don't have a volunteer coordinator. We have an assistant. Plus, we're putting it on our website. So with that, any questions? Thank you, Chief.
Chief, I would make a suggestion. You and I talked about this. The issue that I was raising, we talked about this again yesterday, was the question: make sure if there event of liability and you have coverage for this. And I know, Lieutenant Baker, you made some phone calls and got some information on that. So I think the commission ought to hear that. But make sure that we have coverage for in case of say, unfortunate events. Correct.
So I did speak to the New Mexico Self-Insurers Fund. We do have volunteer insurance. They said pretty much every municipality does. She said, of course, just like with anything else, with any other business or anything else, that doesn't guarantee protection from lawsuits if something were to happen. But we do have the insurance. It is there.
Thank you. And Lieutenant Baker, when you spoke to the self-insurers, I had a question which I had spoken to Regal about. Certain volunteer positions may require the use of a city vehicle. So God forbid that person gets involved in an accident, are they covered?
Yeah, well, the thing is we changed that, and even when we went over this as well as the SOP, we all agreed that the volunteers should probably not be driving any city vehicles, that it should be city employees only at this point, just to protect ourselves from that issue.
So I think in that vein, we probably went to lead paragraph 11E, which is on page 5.
Yeah, I just crossed it off.
Jay talking about that the other day. We did, the one I'm sending to the city manager it has to change. It says they will not drive city vehicles. And he made another minor change, and that's going to be in the final product. Okay?
So basically, if I may understand, Lieutenant, so if someone is handling a dog or a cat and they get bit or seriously scratched or something like that, that the volunteer would be protected and covered under the city's policy? Is that what I'm hearing?
Actually, we would be protected and covered under the city's policy in case that volunteer came back and decided they wanted to sue us. That's what the volunteer insurance, from what I understood from the New Mexico Self-Insurance people, that's what it's there for.
Right.
Is to protect the city. I don't think that we have insurance coverage for volunteers as far as injuries go. It's a volunteer basis, and they're supposed to actually sign a waiver saying that they understand that. Now, that's just from what I understood. Don't quote me on that. I can call back and look into it more, but from what I understood, it protects the city from.
Commissioner
One
Clark.
of the, if I may, sorry, Mayor, but one of the stipulations that we had when we had volunteers was that they had their own health insurance. And before we
Yes.
actually hired them, that was one of the stipulations that we wanted.
Yes, sir.
There's a whole in the book. There's a section where after the application is submitted, and we do the background check and so forth. There's they sign a statement, a hold harmless statement, and it's somewhere in there. But like the city attorney will tell you, and you know, no matter what they sign, there's liability, and that's why the volunteer insurance is by the New Mexico League. Okay.
Commissioner Clark.
Makes sense. Is that right, Jay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
On page 111, if you want to find it.
Yeah, I was, well, you've answered most of it. I was just going to go directly to the volunteers and ask them a question.
Yeah. Robin?
Yeah, so you've done volunteer before in animal shelters, am I?
Yes.
And how have you dealt with this before, knowing that you're going in there and that the liability is yours? You're saying if I get bit, I'm knowing that when I go into the volunteer situation. Do you have any other light that you can shed on this particular
I've never been
subject?
injured. My husband has been volunteering at the Deming Animal Shelter for 12 years. He's been bitten twice, and he went to the emergency room, and they taped it up, and he came home. I mean,
As a volunteer, don't you just kind of know that you're taking that chance anyway?
Yes, I mean, obviously, I mean, in the handbook, I haven't read it yet, if they read, they know that there is a chance they may be injured. If they want to clean cages and just pet kittens and not have a chance of being bitten by a dog, but most of the dogs, I would say, you're going to say, well, these are okay to walk, and don't bother with those. So I don't think the volunteers are going to have any problems at all. So.
Okay. And as long as we have this signed, the release form, I don't think that really is very good protection, but at least it's an acknowledgement going in that could happen. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you.
And Commissioner Clark, I don't know if it makes you feel any better, but I mean, we will have because we do have 2 full-time shelter helpers there now. I mean, so the volunteers won't be by themselves, and of course, Ms. Brodsky will be there, or Bob will be there as well to make sure that, you know, that everything's going all right, and if they need anything, and just to ensure, and they will be trained. We will make sure they know how to do everything in our shelter, to, you know, maybe cut the cost of injury going down. I mean, I'm trained and I've been working there since day one, and I almost had a broken finger the other day from a 160-pound dog. So, you know, it's just known that dog, only the men walk that dog, because he drugged me everywhere the other day. But, I mean, we'll make sure that they ensure that they know, you know, what's going on there, what not to do, what to do, which animals, you know, need specific care, which ones that only our employees will be handling at some point. You know, and they may not get to handle that animal. But, you know, we'll try to cut injury down as much as possible. And as far as I know, I've been the only one that's gotten injured so far, so.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Lieutenant, but thank you. And I'm very pleased that we're starting this volunteer program, and I'm glad that Ms. Lombardo has signed off on it. Thank you, Mayor.
You're very welcome. Any other comments, concerns? Well, great job, all done, and thank you for volunteering to be the volunteers. So we greatly appreciate that. That is the steam that runs the engine, that is for sure. So I will stand for a motion for approval of the volunteer manual guide that's been presented to us, and thank you, Commissioner Heschler, for helping out a little bit and being a part of that product. Someone brave enough to make a motion? I'm not going to bite you, I guarantee you.
Mayor Green, I'd like to move that we approve the TRC Animal Shelter Volunteer Manual as presented by Chief Aragon and his staff. And just as a final, great job. Thank you for rolling this out so quickly, and thank you for reaching out to the community and involving the people from the community to put this together.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I second that motion.
I have a well-said motion by Commissioner Heschler and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. The next item is number 4, discussion action, replacement for the city manager on the Sierra Vista Hospital Governing Board, and our presenter is Manager Canton.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. As you know, former City Manager Juan Fuentes served on the Sierra Vista Hospital Governing Board, and therefore we need to look into replacing that one and appointing someone new to serve on that board. It's my understanding that Mr. Fuentes served as one of the appointed by the commission members, and also the governing board holds a position for the city manager as an ex officio non-voting member. So I wanted to also bring that to your attention. So I'll open it up to you for any discussion.
Discussion ideas. Commissioner Clark.
So, Manager Canton, you're going to go in there as a voting member in that position?
That's up to the commission. If you want me to just serve as the ex officio so I can attend as well and appoint someone else, we could go out for advertisement to appoint someone else as a voting member. So, or you're welcome to appoint me as the voting member to proceed. I just thought I would leave it open to the commission.
Yeah, I don't want to get into a lot of details because that's kind of hospital business, not that commission business. But I think that it's extremely important that we have somebody sitting on that governing board that can keep us informed of what's going on, since the JPC only hears X amount. So I think that in this particular instance, it's a very good idea, and thank you, City Manager, for volunteering, because you've already got enough 100 million things to do, and this is adding another one on.
Well, to add to that, Commissioner, I feel like it's important. I thought, long and hard about maybe somebody else should take this at this point, but really this is a very important part of the city, and I feel like it's important for me to have that knowledge as well.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I do too.
As long as you feel that you can handle 12 balls in the air at one time and not have them hit the ground, I appreciate that. I would also like to just suggest that we advertise for the position, and that if any of the commissioners have ideas of who might serve us and our financial interest as owners of the hospital on the governing board, that please bring that information into Manager Canton's office, because I agree with Commissioner Clark. This is vital. We are 40% owners of the hospital, and we've got to have a voice, and we've got to know what's going on, so we can be effective at the ownership board level. Any other further discussion or ideas? Commissioner
Well, it's a
Clark.
question to Manager Canton. Are you comfortable being a voting member right now, or would you prefer to be in as ex officio until you're a little more up to speed on what this hospital's doing?
I would say there's enough people who can kind of bring me up to speed where I would be comfortable
voting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And my suggestion, Commissioner Clark, and it's a good point, is that when Manager Canton can find the time, that's not a jaw tobacco in my cheek, it's my tongue, to make an appointment with David Faulkner, the CEO of the hospital, and possibly the gentleman, Steve, I think it's Huey, H-U-E-Y, who is the CFO, Chief Financial Officer. Maybe you get them both in one room, take an hour of their time, and they can really bring you up to date, which they did for the newly minted Commissioner, County Commissioner Paxson. They spent an hour, and he actually felt comfortable in voting and participating in the JPC meeting. So that would just be my suggestion, but you do what you feel is right, and you have time to do. So, no further discussion, hearing none, I'll stand for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move that we replace or that we appoint our interim city manager, Renee Canton, to be on the governing board, Sierra Vista Governing Board.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead and a second by?
I'll second it.
A second by Commissioner Baca. Any further discussion?
Can I amend that motion?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, can we put as a voting member, not ex officio, make that clear?
Oh, okay. Let's amend it to put her as a voting member.
Thank you.
I have a motion, amended motion, and amended second. Any further discussion? Only point I would like to make, I'd like to ask the clerk's office if you could send out an email to Mr. Greg Demore, who is the chair of the governing board, and let him know that that seat is now being replaced and occupied by Mayor Campbell. So she's ready to go at the first meeting. Okay, the next item is discussion action replacement for the city manager on the SCRTA board. Again, Ms. Campbell.
Yes, the mayor, commissioners, also, the former city manager also served on the SCRTA board, and therefore, we need to appoint a replacement or decide whether we wanted to advertise for that or whatever your wishes might be.
I think, again, this is an important board because the city has a financial investment in this organization. I know that we've got some representative, I think you just left. Lieutenant Baker, do you know, is the chief on that board?
Yes, the
Am I
chief is
correct?
on that
The
board.
chief is on that board. But I think that we need to have someone there. They meet monthly or quarterly, do you know? They do meet monthly, okay.
And I do already have requested an appointment with their executive director, Nikki.
Okay.
Just to be brought up to speed
I
anyway.
know that Tracy Burnett, and I'm not volunteering you, Miss Burnett, but I know, only because I spend time in that building with my emails, that you were Manager Fuentes' proxy, and that you did go to some of those meetings and have kind of a working understanding of what SCRTA does, how they function, and all that kind of good stuff. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not promoting anyone over anyone else, but, and I don't know, so maybe we can start the discussion. Manager Campton, how's your dance cars? Getting filled up real quick?
You could say that.
Right. Is this something that, Ms. Burnett, would you have time on your dance card since you've been there, done that? Is that something that you feel would not jeopardize the other projects and the time schedule that you have to hit these projects on? I don't want it to be a takeaway.
I would be honored to take that position, maybe when the commission was looking for somebody permanent, if that's your direction. I do feel it's very important for somebody that is very involved in the financials and the GRT, because that plays a large part in it. And as much as I know her schedule is really loaded, I was really hoping to see Manager Canton step in. I'd be happy to attend as well, when she couldn't.
Okay.
I'd be happy to take it, just, again, so I can learn it, because this is another important part that's been a little controversial as of lately, and maybe once I feel that I can step aside, we can bring it back and revisit it.
Okay. So I'm sensing as you would be our representative. I don't think Commissioner Clark is 100%.
I'm just seeing this woman overloaded
I
already.
don't want to get in
and
the same
There's a
problem
learning
that we
curve
got
that's
into
so
in the
important for
past.
each one of these boards, and I really appreciate Manager Kenton putting her name out there, but I'm starting to feel very protective of you, even though I'm your neighbor. And I'm really concerned about, this is 2 brand new boards. That's an awful lot of knowledge to gather in a short period of time. My preference would be to have Ms. Burnett sit in that position and report to the manager in a summarized version, or if Manager Canton wants to go with you to that meeting, but not have the obligation to have to be there, so that if she can't make it or something like that. That's just me being your protective right hand here. But that's my comment that I'd like to make to my commission.
And I agree with you, Commissioner Clark. I also think it's vitally important that wherever the city has a deep financial investment, that our representative should be staff and not someone from the outside, where we have on the governing board, you know, we have 2, and they're doing a great job, don't get me wrong. But on these type of sensitive boards, we've got to have staff there because we've got to get the information.
Well, and if you remember, Mayor, Ms. Barnett plays with a lot of money in our city. It's not like she's walking in there not knowing how to add 2 and 2 and come up with 5, you know, so I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea.
Mr. Mayor, I feel that, again, our Tracy is overloaded. She's got a lot of projects out there going, and she does a great job with them. I think our Manager Canton, at this time, we need the manager in there. I mean, you know, Manager Fuentes did a great job. He was there for a long time. If she becomes overwhelmed, she can always come back and let us know, and then we can look for some help for her. But I think this would be a great opportunity, a great learning curve for her, and she's got great staff that can also help her if needed. That's where I would go, because I think, you know, in a short time, hopefully, we're going to come back and put somebody permanent on there.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'll
That's my
concede
thought.
to you if it's the choice of the manager here. And I think I'm going to just leave it with you.
I would agree to that. And I will bring it back to you. If I'm super overwhelmed and feel like I've learned enough and it's time, I'd be happy to bring it back to the commission.
So, and in light of that, I like the idea. I thought I heard you say, Manager Campton, that if Tracy would be available and she had time on the date of the meeting, that, so if you should decide that this is just too much, I just cannot handle it, and my other responsibilities are being hurt, and therefore I'm hurting the city and the commission, that at least we have someone who is up to date, more or less, and even if Tracy doesn't go to the meeting, I would ask that you just give her a briefing of what is being transpired, so in the event that you can't make a meeting, you're in a meeting someplace up in Santa Fe looking for money, whatever it might be, that we've got someone who can just pick up the ball and just keep on running with it. We don't lose anything.
Absolutely.
All right. Any other
Mayor,
questions?
are those bylaws so that you need to put a person in, and do they allow for an alternate? Do we know the
I guess
bylaws
they
of
must be,
Sturda?
because Tracy was Juan's alternate.
I believe she was just a proxy. I'm not sure how that was worded, but we can look at it.
If you guys recall, there was an issue with commission meetings that were also interfering with the SCRTA board meetings, and that with the law enforcement complex, that's kind of where previous manager Fuentes brought me in, and so I started tending to just gain knowledge. So then when he was unable to attend, he just notified SCRTA board that I would be attending on his behalf as his proxy, which meant I was able to vote. There were also times where I attended on his behalf where maybe there were items on the agenda that I didn't have knowledge of, and I just attended to gather information and I didn't vote. So it's at the discretion of whoever, if it's a Manager Canton, you know, she can decide whether or not there needs to be a vote made and I can be a proxy vote, or whether I just need to attend the meeting to gather information to bring back to her because maybe she can't attend. And then when he was able to go, I always went in attendance with him just to keep updated on everything. And I think the same is said for the chief. If the chief is unable to attend, then it was Captain Apodaca that would go in as proxy.
Okay. And is Sheriff Hamilton still the chair of that board?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Any further questions, discussion? Otherwise, I will stand for a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for the appointment of interim city manager Canton to fulfill the vacancy on the SCRTA board.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead and a second by? Do we want to, just a question, Mayor Pro Tem, do we want to put down and that Tracy Burnett would be appointed as the proxy for the manager? Do we need that, or is that just your choice?
It seems to me that, former city manager just had chosen
Your
her.
choice.
That
Okay.
might leave it
All right.
open.
So we have a motion. I need a second. Second by Commissioner Baca. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. Report, city manager.
Oh boy, have I got a report. First, I want to start by introducing our new assistant clerk, Lisa Gabaldon, who's taking the back seat, but she's watching. So Lisa, please stand up. I want to introduce her to the commission and to the public. We're thrilled to have her as part of our team. And I want to say a special thank you to Angela Torres, who's been training her, and who will also be serving as acting city clerk in my absence and helping us keep everything straight moving forward in the clerk's office. It's been an eventful couple of weeks, as you can imagine. I've met with all the department heads together and already met with some individually, and we'll plan to meet with the rest as soon as possible and have requested tours of each of the facilities. And I thank each of you who immediately offered your support to me during the transition. That has made it so much easier for me. We really have a great bunch of employees. I'm enjoying getting to know them, and some that I haven't had as much contact with. And one of the first priorities was meeting with Finance Director, HR Payroll, to get an update on where we were with the vacant positions, and to proceed to get those that are already in the budget filled. So we're moving on that. And I was pleasantly surprised that I was actually familiar with the majority of the projects that we currently have, and learned quite a bit more about each of them during the project meetings, which was very beneficial. I want to thank the commissioners who already stopped by to talk with me, and I plan to meet with the rest of you before the end of the week. And I have already met with Representative Dow and Terry Taylor, who provided great information, and thank you to Commissioner Heschler for meeting with Terry and I on the golf course. We are working on a plan to put together that will be presented to the commission at a later date. I also have a couple of ideas that were presented to the department heads for employee morale, and we'll be sharing those with the commission soon as well. Water leaks. Do you have any change on that, Arnie, or is it basically what you gave me this morning?
Morning, Mr. Mayor and members of the commission. So we have 4 pending water leaks out there. One on Veeder, 905 Joffrey, 501 Main, and 6th and Kruger. We do have another one on Cherry Lane. The terrain there is very rocky, and we decided to go ahead and try and get a contractor to help us out with that one. But from the list that you've heard in the past of 10, 12, 15 leaks out there, right now there's only 4 that we're actively leaking. In addition to that, we do have 3 pending water and sewer taps, one at 1005 Bosque, 811 Sunset, and 107 North Magnolia. So you all know we have a shortage in our employees in our water department, so we got our wastewater crew to help out. Wastewater crew is doing the taps and water and sewer taps, while the water crew does the leaks themselves. So we've been able to get a handle of them, and that's what we're doing right now. Any questions?
Any questions? I just have one. You mentioned an outside contractor, Arnie. Is that money, when you submitted your budget, do you plan for that eventuality, or now do you have to start going looking, or is that just going to just deplete out of your operating budget?
Well, yeah, Mr. Mayor, we didn't really, or haven't in the last couple of years, specifically put money aside for contractors. We do have a line item within our budget that we use for things that come up, contingencies, you could say. And we've been pulling from there.
Thank you.
I have just one more
Commissioner
question.
Clark.
Just out of curiosity, the leaks that you've been fixing the last month or so, and thank you, you've really done a great job, I appreciate it. But just out of curiosity, how many would be like meter leaks as opposed to broken pipe leaks? Do you have any feel for that?
Yeah, well, we discussed it, I think it was last meeting a little bit. I think about 70% of the leaks we have are service leaks, which means 3/4 inch lines, maybe 1-inch lines. The rest are water main lines, right?
But what about the water meters themselves? I know the one that was in front of my place was the actual meter, and it was some gaskets that had created that leak.
Yeah, water meters themselves, those are rare and in between. We do have them, but not very, very much.
That was the question I was
Yeah.
asking. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh, I think it was, sorry.
Mayor Canton, just, I didn't know if you were going to give us an update on the nitrate, on the sulfur system, and how it was working with the water, and I'd like to hear from Artie how that's coming about.
Absolutely, yeah. If you could give a little update on the sulfur system for the golf.
Yeah, so, before I was on medical leave there for a couple of months. Before I left, we had put in an order for the sulfur unit to come in. When I came back in early August, we started to work on the project and get the thing connected and running. It took us about a week and a half to get the feel for the unit, so where we were actually operating correctly. The last couple of weeks has been operating. However, I don't feel comfortable that it is being effective. We placed it, let me back up a little bit. Before we ordered it, Jesus, former director Jesus and myself had discussions of where to place this unit, right? We could have placed it at the wastewater treatment plant, at the Armijo Pond, or even at the golf course itself. Because of convenience, we decided to put it at the treatment plant and inject into a pump station that pumps the water into the Armijo Pond, and then from there it's distributed. We didn't take into consideration the pumping schedules and the SCADA automatic system that turns on and off the pumps. And so although we got a handle on the unit and the unit does its job, because of the pumping schedule, it's not being effective and it's not injecting enough sulfur into the pond that I'm comfortable with yet. So it works off of pH. pH is the acidity in the water. And so the pH in the pond is about 10 pH of 10. In order for the unit to be effective, it needs to be about 6.5. So since the unit has been online, we've gone down to about 8.5, which is still a long way from being at 6. So if we relocate the sulfur unit to the Armijo Pond, I think it'll be a lot better to reduce that pH effectively and clear the water so that it can be used at the parks, at the golf course. I don't have, I have a picture of the unit in a pit where it was murky. The water was murky coming out of the treatment plant. As soon as we injected the sulfur within hours, you could see clear down to the wet well. It was that clear. So it does its job. We just need to relocate it, I think, to the Armijo Pond.
Do you want the scheduling that's going to be?
We are starting to move it as we speak. We need to put it in a little, it can't be on the ground, has to be elevated, and then it needs running water. So there is no potable water out there close by, so what we're trying to do is get a little pump. We have a couple of spare pumps at the treatment plant that we can use to boost the water and run water through it. So we're starting to disconnect it now from where it's at, move it over. I'm thinking it'll probably take a couple of weeks before we can set the stand on it and connect that pump to it. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And last but not least, I was going to ask the chief if he had any report for us, but he's not here. Do you have anything that he may have given you? Okay, well, we'll get another report from him.
Oh, maybe she.
As you guys know, our volunteer thing, we just need your approval, but it's already been in the works, so that's going really well, and we've made a lot of good connections with the community as well. We're going to be having monthly adoption things going on at Tractor Supply every month. We've made arrangements with management over there, and they're like 100 support with us doing that as well, so people can come get brochures and information on adoption in the shelter, and any other questions they have for us, staff will be there to answer. I'd just like to say that our officers are doing a really good job out there on the streets. We're getting a lot of these criminals and stuff put away. We've had a lot of pretty big cases that you'll probably hear coming out in the paper. I won't elaborate because there's quite a few of them that we've had over the last few weeks. And other than that, we're operating smoothly.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant.
Thank you.
That's the end of my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Attorney Rubin.
Yes, I just want to give you a scheduling update. I just found out that on October 12th, when we have a city commission meeting, I have to be in district court at 10 o'clock. Probably take about an hour. So I just want to mention that to you now. I guess the options are I can just show up at 9 o'clock here and then excuse myself before 10 o'clock and come back. Or if we feel more comfortable, we could start the meeting here later that morning. So I just thought I'd throw that at you. If you decide you want to take that second option, I guess we have to just make sure we advertise correctly the Sierra Vista Hospital ordinance that we already voted on that would start later in the morning instead of 9 o'clock. So that's why I wanted to just mention this now to see if you have a preference.
I appreciate that, Attorney Rubin. What we could do is, it's the will of the commission, obviously, but to keep business as normal moving forward, but to take a look at the agenda and then poll the commission and ask them, are there any questions about legal nature that you have on agenda items, and we front load the agenda that way. We just move things around.
And I think that's a good idea. I was going to suggest that when we're actually prepared to draw up the agenda for that meeting, I can work with Ms. Canton, and we can make sure to put the items that I probably would need to be involved in either before or after.
Right.
I'm noticing public comment starts at, we start at 9 o'clock, that usually goes close to 10 o'clock by the time we get done on that, so we might want to just maybe put the legal items kind of towards the end of that meeting, so.
Okay.
I just want to just mention it to you right now, so you can be aware.
Good, I appreciate that.
What
We
about
appreciate
starting the
that.
meeting at 8?
Whatever you got, I'm up at
I
4:30.
think so.
Too early?
Beauty sleep, beauty sleep.
No, it's in my coffee time. Bring it in.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll plan on just going at 9 o'clock then.
Okay.
All right.
And you'll be working with Manager Canton as we get closer to the
Very good.
12th, and we'll see where we're at, what's up.
Thank you, everybody.
Do you know how long your meeting at the court will be?
I have actually two hearings. One's scheduled for 10 o'clock, which I think is going to run about half an hour. And they gave me a second hearing at 10:45, which I think is going to take a few minutes. I figure I'd be back by about 11 o'clock.
We could put things toward the end.
Yes, that's probably what we do.
Just moving around and just getting as normal. And we'll just talk slow until we get there. That's all.
Well,
Oh, come on.
Like one example would be, for example, if we are going to have the Brody Law Firm here for that Sierra Vista Hospital, that could be something to be done while I'm not here, since they're going to be here for that. So that's just, one idea.
Yeah, I'm
Or maybe not.
I'm not quite sure I'm comfortable with you
Okay.
not being here. We're
Okay.
signing a document
All
for
right, okay.
$26 million.
Fair enough then. Okay.
Is that when you
That's
talk
fair
about the
enough.
public
Okay,
hearing?
Okay, I'll work with Renee.
We'll look at it.
Good. All right, thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead.
Yes, thank you. The only question I do have is, I've had a lot of calls regarding mosquito spraying. Could you elaborate on mosquito spraying, of when they're doing it, if they're doing it, and
They have started the vector spraying. I believe the schedule is Tuesdays. Help me out.
Tuesdays on the south side of town, and on Thursdays.
Thursdays, north side of town.
that,
So
and
that
that
is-
that encompasses east and the west too, right? The whole
Correct.
areas?
And then they do, I think up to a ray they spray. That's my understanding.
Now, we do also keep a list of those who request, not, the spray not be done at their home
Okay.
as well, so we have a no spray list. But it is ongoing, it has started.
Okay, thank you. And that's all I have.
Commissioner Heschler.
I just wanted to recognize the efforts of the NMDOT recently who donated 140 round posts to the city. Initially, we had one of these to replace the posts at the golf course. They may or may not be suitable for that. Looks like the posts at the golf course are up right now, so we may do that. But they also donated 3,600 yards of millings or fines, and those millings or fines right now are being placed at Rodeo Road to the wastewater plant. So hopefully that'll help us out in some dust suppression. And I was hoping, in keeping a good or a great relationship with NMDOT, that the city would write a letter of thanks to them if they haven't done so already.
Do we know, Mr. Hessler, who you're dealing with specifically?
Mr. Doolittle, I believe.
Trent Doolittle. Okay.
Well, it actually went to Santa Fe for the final approval.
Right,
so.
yeah, Cabinet Secretary Church.
Right, so.
Right.
I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner, was that it? That's okay. Commissioner Clark?
No, for
Commissioner Baca?
Mr. Mayor, Lieutenant Baker would like to make one more comment on behalf of the
Yes,
chief.
absolutely.
I'm sorry, I actually wanted to say this during public comment, but I got called away for some important stuff going on with my guys. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, but there is a Tiger Day that they're having October 20th. It's going to be at the Tiger Stadium. It's basically the community coming together, rallying and supporting the kids, letting them know that the community is behind them and all their extracurricular activities. You have Envirothon, the athletic teams that are going to be there. You're going to have different businesses that are going to be there that are going to have booths set up. You're going to have information from the kids are going to be doing stuff, from what I understand. I know Mr. Jim Shaley is in big support of the kids, and so the police department will be there as well. We'll be there representing the police department, and also we'll be representing Shop with a Cop, which is another organization that I am over to help the less fortunate kids in our community. So I thought the commission, if they didn't know, would like to know about that and get with Mr. Shaley and maybe go by and show your support. So it is going to be like a community event for the kids at the school.
What time is it, Lieutenant?
I'm not sure. That's something you have to get with Mr. Shealy about. He's usually at all the schools and events, and I know he also has a Facebook as well. So, but I thought it would be important for you guys to know about, since we're going to be there as well to show our support.
Thank you. We'll find out some information and distribute it to the commission.
Good, I appreciate that, and maybe post a quorum notice.
Sure.
Excellent. Commissioner Baca, did you have a report? Okay. I just want to, first of all, I want to thank Lieutenant Baker for lending your voice to, I thought, was a wonderful event yesterday. You are a woman of many talents. It was awesome. And I want to thank Denise Addy. Those who were in attendance yesterday for the 9/11 memorial up at our Veterans Memorial Park, she came up with this idea 5 weeks ago, pulled some people together, some volunteers, and put together what I thought was a real tasteful, thoughtful, appropriate event. I hope it's an annual event. I had very strong support from our business community, who donated and donated and donated. I just wanted to thank her. I thought it was just really, we had about 250 people, I think probably a little bit more, until the food ran out, and then those people left, and the ones who wanted to sit and get suffered and hear people talk in a hot, blistering sun had the courage to stay. And past Governor Gary Johnson was there, past Representative Hamilton, Diane Hamilton, Frances Luna was supposed to be there as Vice Chair of the county, but she couldn't make it, so her place was taken by Jim Paxton, who is the new commissioner on their council, and Representative Rebecca Dow, who I had the privilege and opportunity to sit next to, and myself. And Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead and Commissioner Clark have occasionally chided me on my long-windedness. Occasionally chided. I'm giving you guys the benefit of the doubt. And so I had a little side bet with Representative Rebecca Dow, because she spoke before me, and I said, you know, you've been to city commission meetings. We have a 3-minute public comment. I bet you can't do it in 3 minutes. So she timed herself, and She came in at 3 minutes and 38 seconds. And she said, "I set the mark real high, Steve. You're a loser." I said, "Give me a chance, Representative." My time was 3 minutes and 16 seconds, getting close to that 3 minutes. So, thank you to all the volunteers. Thank you again, Lieutenant Baker, the color guard, Seth and Laura Dow sang. I thought it was just a terrific event, and thank you all who participated and made it happen.
And the sun was wonderful.
Oh, and hot. Lost 5 pounds.
I don't think it was as wonderful for me as it was for you.
So, that's the end of my report. I will need a motion to go into executive session, please.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session under K1, Limited Personnel Matters, City Manager Recruitment and Interim City Manager pursuant to 10-15-1H2 in about 5 minutes.
Okay, I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Whitehead. I need a second by Commissioner Baca. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I have roll call, please.
Honorable Steve Green.
Yes.
Honorable Sandra Whitehead.
Aye.
Honorable Ralph Heschler.
Yes.
Honorable Kathleen Clark.
Aye.
Honorable Paul Buckner.
Yes. All right, we're going to recess 5 minutes. We'll be back.